The sound of praise for your Sunday morning.
The only one who could ever teach me
Introducing Reverend A.R. Bernard of the Christian Cultural Center
was the son of a preacher man.
and Rabbi Joseph Potasnik of Religion on the Line.
The only one who could ever teach me.
Now, here's the Reb and the Rabbi, where faith matters.
Good morning. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, before we introduce our special guest, let me just tell you that I don't know about you, but I'm rooting for Argentina. Right? It's going to be Argentina versus Spain. But I'm rooting for a different reason, perhaps, than others.
I'm curious.
See, the president
Go
of Argentina is a great supporter of Israel. Lionel Messi is a great supporter of Israel. That's all I need.
Right? He made the threshold. Okay, I get it.
No, but Messi is quite a player. He's unbelievable.
Oh, he's good. Well, it was interesting watching them play against England. There were quite a few people that I knew who were rooting for England, and Argentina came out on top. So, all good. Next.
All right. We're honored to have someone that has become one of my favorite people. And, Rev, as you get to know him, you'll find he will occupy that same position with you. And I'm talking about Chief John Esposito, who's Chief of Department of FDNY. And one of the most knowledgeable people I've come across over the years. He has, a stellar background. You don't just become a chief overnight. I was talking to Commissioner Cassano, who's a loyal listener of the program, and he says, John Esposito, one of the best. And you talk to John Esposito, says, Commissioner Cassano, one of the best. So the fact that they're linked that way, we're very fortunate to have. Chief Esposito, good morning to you.
Welcome.
Good morning, Rabbi, and good morning, Reverend. It's great to be talking to you, and I'm very happy to be on and talk about what we do in the fire department.
So, Chief, a building in Manhattan was posing a grave danger to the tenants, to surrounding buildings. Here on, 42nd and 2nd or 43rd and 2nd?
Sure. It was a very large building. So it actually fronted on 2nd Avenue, fronted on 42nd Street, and then went through and also had a small part that fronted on 43rd Street.
How does a building get into such critical condition and it wasn't detected earlier?
So it was, part of the conversions that we're seeing since COVID of more and more commercial buildings to residential. So it was, reported it was the former headquarters for Pfizer, purchased a few years ago with a very large scale project to convert it to residential. And part of that was to add several floors to it. So you can imagine this huge building with a big construction project. It looks like they added several floors to it at some time in the past, and we responded to a call for bricks falling from the building, which was determined to be the old facade, some bricks in the street. We knew that it was a significant incident when we arrived, and many of the construction workers were already out in the street. Our trades workers in the city are, pretty rough and tumble, tough guys. For them to leave a building like that, we knew that that's a sign for us that there's something significant going on.
Chief, when FDNY goes into a building, one of these major high-rise buildings, do you have to know in advance the internal structure? If you're going to fight whatever the problem is, you have to know more than just looking at the building from the outside, obviously.
You do want to know how the building's built. And, we classify high-rise buildings, lightweight, medium weight, and heavyweight. So think of the Empire State Building. It was a steel frame building with all the steel encased in concrete. That is a heavyweight, older type building. Right after World War II, an Army bomber flew into the Empire State Building, and the Empire State Building really didn't suffer much damage. Obviously, there were some fatalities and a significant fire, but the building, held it. Over the years and construction practices change, the redundancy, it's less and less redundancy because it's more and more engineered. And, you get a lighter weight building where the steel is not encased in concrete. It has spray-on fireproofing, and it's generally then just the steel and Q decking and a poured concrete floor, which is significantly lighter. But yes, these are all things that we, as we're fighting a fire in a building or dealing with a structural stability issue, that we figure out pretty quickly.
Yeah. Not to mention the damage King Kong did to the
I
Empire
knew
State
he would
Building.
go there.
Who doesn't remember that
go
scene when you
there.
think of the Empire State Building? Rev?
Yeah, I'm curious because, when we see buildings, giving way like that, I won't say collapse, giving way like that, we're still 25 years later. We're going to celebrate the 25th anniversary of 9/11, the collapse of those towers. And there's so many conspiracy theories that are still, out there concerning, how the towers collapse and whatnot. Help us understand if it's okay. I want to be careful not to put you into, an awkward place. But are any of these things making sense, or is it, shut and close deal as to what happened with how that
Well,
those buildings fell?
yeah, no, in my mind, there's no mystery, right? So when you realize how the World Trade Center buildings were built, that would be an example of lightweight high-rise construction. And, growing up in New York, and I imagine you guys may have heard this too, that, the World Trade Center buildings, the Twin Towers, were built to withstand the impact of a plane. And I remember hearing that. And, well, they did. They withstood the impact. I guess they didn't think that there was going to be fuel in those planes. When the steel gets heated up, it weakens, right? Starting at 1,000 degrees, steel starts losing its strength, and it can't hold what's above it. And whether it's 100 feet in the air or 1,000 feet in the air, when it loses the strength and it can't hold what's above it, it's going to fall. And I think there was a general sense that day that these buildings can't fall. And obviously, after the first one fell, it was clear that yes, they can, and that and obviously they both fell. But it's looking back now and what we know and how that happened. To me, it's not a surprise now that they fell. The steel was not encased in concrete. It had spray-on fireproofing, which we know has varying levels of effectiveness.
We're going to take a break.
We've got to go to a break because I have a follow-up question to that. Stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on your Sunday morning on Red Apple Radio Networks.
Reverend A.R. Bernard, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi. Where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Follow-up question. I think Perry Mason used to say
that.
It's a tricky
our
one.
guest, Chief John Esposito from FDNY. Yeah, so, look, again, conspiracy theories will go on and theories will go on and on and on, but you said something important, the difference between new construction where the beams are surrounded and cased in concrete, which is going to add to greater strength. But does jet fuel have the ability to spread downward so quickly, carrying intense heat, that, the building can collapse like that?
So, all these buildings have elevator shafts in them. And if you remember a few years ago, we had a helicopter crash on a foggy day, fly into the side of one of our office buildings in Manhattan.
Right.
The concern was if the fuel from the helicopter got to the bottom of that elevator shaft. And we have reports on 9/11 of some of the jet fuel going down the elevator shaft, burning people in the elevator. And I don't know how many elevators there were in the building. I don't know the number offhand, but it, in my mind, knowing building construction, it's totally reasonable that some of that jet fuel that was burning got down some of those elevator shafts. That to me seems reasonable.
So,
me
Chief,
too. Yeah.
let me ask you. I'm looking for an apartment, for example, and all these buildings are being converted, and I think to myself, well, let me look at the history of this building before the apartments were finalized, and I read, wow, this happened, that happened. How do I feel secure when there's been, some defect at the time in the construction?
Well, our Department of Buildings is great. I am sure that they are going to, whatever remedy they come up with and the plan that they will review and approve. I am 100% sure that that building will be safe and there'll be no issue. I don't have the expertise to know what that whole plan, would be, but that raises a very interesting question. New York is a big city and it's an old city, and you can ask that question of anybody that lives in the city. What happened in your building?
Yeah.
What happened in your apartment? Some of these buildings, many buildings in New York are over 100 years old.
That's a great follow-up, because I was going to ask you, you walk down the street and you see air conditioning units outside of windows. You see a facade that looks, it's worn. And, we take it for granted. We walk through. But the other side of that is that there is a concern. So there are inspections, periodic inspections. People look at buildings through buildings departments and say, hey, wait a minute, there's a potential risk here on these old buildings.
Well, and the old buildings that get renovated, I mean, you think of the buildings up and down, say, 2nd Avenue in the 70s and 80s, on the east side of Manhattan.
Right.
Those are old law tenements that were built, some of them in the 1890s,
wow.
right? Two centuries ago, 130, 140 years ago. And they get renovated over time and they get inspected, and they're in good shape. But we could have that problem with newer construction as well, with water leaks and building components rotted, and so there's always a concern. We have a great buildings department, we have a great fire department, and when there's a problem, we come out and look at it and investigate and issue orders to have it repaired and fixed.
Yeah.
Chief, let me ask not even a sci-fi question, but a technology question. How advanced is technology that can be placed in a way to look at these buildings and kind of see into the infrastructure of the buildings? Are we there yet, where we can put an X-ray on it and see the beams or whatever? Are we there?
That I don't know. I know that we use technology. We use our drones. We can fly. And in this collapse last week on 42nd Street, we in fact had our drones out there flying, and we're able to put them right up on that floor and really get a good picture of what's going on inside that building in cases. And we're able to evaluate and assess multiple floors much quicker than putting our firefighters up there. And certainly if it's a more dangerous situation, we don't want to put our firefighters in. We're able to do that from the outside. So the drone technology continues, to advance. As far as, being able to see, see through the wall board or the sheathing, we're not using that technology at this time. And a lot of times that wall board, if that is, cracked or ripped or broken, that's to us is an indication that there's a structural problem in the building, because as the building settles and moves, that wall board or those bricks or whatever are gonna show signs of damage. So we use that as a as an indicator of a problem.
So, Chief, personal question: you could have done many things during your lifetime, and you chose to go to FDNY. We can ask the same thing of NYPD. You chose to put your life at risk. Why?
Well, it's the only thing I ever wanted to do since I was a little kid. You see, I guess a lot of kids want to grow up and be firemen, and it's the way it worked out for me. And I think I was telling you last week, Rabbi, when you said you had gone to law school, I spent a year in law school when I was a young firefighter, and had a decision to make. Am I going to continue with law school and look to make that a career, or stay here? And I made the decision to stay here, and think it worked out all right.
New York is better for you. Yeah.
It's a job that you want to do, and
it's a calling.
Crazy
I think it's really
sounds.
a calling.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah, there's a sense of calling. Go ahead, Chief, please.
No, I'm sorry. Just as crazy as it sounds, we love it and enjoy it. So.
Yeah, it's true. I wish we had more time. I was looking at a podcast that you were on, the Salty Paramedic. I don't know if you remember, but you were on it and talking about leadership, legacy, and life at the firehouse. Quickly, leadership and legacy. Give us parting words on that.
We know that our people want good leadership, and I guess when your time is done, how do you want to be thought of, and what your legacy to be, and just that you did the right thing, and you looked out after your people, and you protected them, and you did the job the right way, and made those that came before you proud. If and you always think of what we lost on September 11th, and it's almost like you those are the guys that are judging you, and you just hope that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
Chief John
Great way to look
Esposito.
at it.
Let me just tell you, John, how much people appreciate a rabbi at FDNY. It was a fire years ago. On Carroll Street. And I remember rushing there, and the guys were in the ambulance. Opened the door of the ambulance, and they look at me and say, "Oh, thank God it's you," because when we see a priest, we're really nervous. But having a rabbi, now we'll be okay. So you see, it's good to have a rabbi.
Well, that's right. Of course. Well, go ahead, Chief. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. We have Rabbi Potasnik is the chief chaplain for the FDNY, and every time he shows up and the weather is nice, he takes credit for the weather. So
of course he does.
We appreciate all of that, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to have you.
Of course.
In a professional and a personal relationship. John Esposito, Chief of Department, FDNY. The city of New York is blessed to have this kind of talent.
Amen to that. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
And stay tuned for more of The Rev and the Rabbi. We'll be right back right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
Reverend A.R. Bernard, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, the Rev and the Rabbi.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, there are times in life when you meet people and you don't know what to say because they've experienced unbearable loss, unspeakable tragedy. And you and I were able to meet Ronen and Orna Nutra, whose son was murdered in Gaza, a hostage, and later murdered. And when you met them, you felt they were giving you strength. You wanted to give them strength? they were giving you strength, and we're very fortunate to have them with us today. Ronan, Orna, thank you so much for being on The Rev and the Rabbi.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yes, we're happy to be back.
So I guess you're often asked the question, where do you get the strength? I hate the word closure. I think closure is just the wrong word to ever use when someone undergoes such a painful loss. But where do you get the strength to continue to rebuild your lives? Different, but where does it come from?
Well, let me remind your listeners that on October 7, 250 people were taken out of the beds and taken hostage. We found ourselves as New Yorkers living here, a son born in New York, raised on Long Island within a very warm community. And we found ourselves all of a sudden in one of the biggest crises in the world, one of the largest numbers of hostages. And we live here in the United States and we ask ourselves, what are we doing? And we understood immediately that we have a special role. Our son is a American citizen, and we immediately activated some of the members of the community, and we reached Washington. And we know that on October 8th, already a day later, Secretary Blinken had a letter in his hand notifying him that there is a crisis in the Middle East, among them many Americans that were abducted, and the mission that we had in front of us really kept us going. And a lot of the strength that we got is by meeting people that embraced us and understood it's not a political issue. It's a humanitarian issue. It's a terrible crisis, and we had to bring it to some conclusion.
Right. It took 2 years. First of all, for 14 months, we didn't know what happened to our son. And we did everything that we could to bring him back alive. Unfortunately, after 14 months, we were notified that he was actually murdered on October 7th. And his body was still held hostage, and we couldn't stop. For us, it was not an option to just leave his remains in Gaza. He deserved a proper burial, a respectable one. And, our mission kept us going, and the support of the communities that rallied around us and the other families that became our own families. And thank God, we can say in summer 2026, there are no more hostages in Gaza.
Yeah.
So that episode is over. And, but now we're left, with the task of continuing our son's legacy and his light in the world, because in his short life, he did a lot. He was a leader within his local communities here in the United States, and also when he moved to Israel, he continued with that, being an active leader in the community and in his service as well. So, we feel tasked by that, and that is our mission.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that point, because here, 21-year-old young man living in the United States, growing up on Long Island, and he decides, he's going to go to Israel, and he becomes an IDF tank commander. What was that conversation like with you when he even suggested that he would want to leave the U.S. to go to Israel?
We really love Israel, and he grew up in a community that really cares about the two countries, about the friendship, about the connection. And Omer came to a conclusion that you can't just talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. And he said, we got to protect that land. It's precious.
We have both Ronan's father and my father are Holocaust survivors.
Right.
And, Omer grew up with an understanding that the Jewish state is a necessity for the Jewish people, that it has to be a strong country that is able to protect and provide respite for the Jewish people. And he was a person, that took action. He is a person of service. He did whatever is needed. Initially, he went to Israel to visit the family. We have a very big family over there, and coming to know his peers, the same age group in Israel. In Israel, military service is mandatory. That's the situation. It's a country that needs to protect itself every single day, and October 7th just proved that, and everything that has happened since. And he just felt that he couldn't just go back to college. He did it. He felt he needed to do his share in supporting Israel. He never felt there was any conflict with his American identity. Israel is one of the biggest allies of the United States and represented Western values in the region. Everything came together for him. It was not. It was the right thing to do for him. So.
Wow. Talk about, I know many people are remembering this week Senator Lindsey Graham. You met with him. Can you talk about that?
Yes. Senator Lindsey Graham was one of the first senators who understood the extent of the crisis in the Middle East, who understood and spoke about the Iran reasoning of pushing Hamas for the October 7 in order to avoid normalization with Saudi Arabia. He was one of the first senators to lead a delegation, a bipartisan delegation of senators to Israel. Over 10 senators came by, five Republicans and 5 Democrats, and met with the families to hear our voices and to put all the pressure on the players in the area to reach an agreement with Hamas, put the pressure on them to release them. He was very, very vocal about that, and we'll never forget the fact that he stood with us.
So Senator Graham, this was a Biden administration, a Democratic administration, and Senator Graham said, I am here for the cause. This is not a partisan issue. I have a role here. I've told the president that I will do whatever is needed, and he led this delegation to Israel, to Saudi Arabia, to the different players in the region, trying to save, what was going to be normalization before October 7th in the region. And he said, this is really, the way I see it, your chance also at getting your family members back home. And I'm going to do everything I can. With all the constraints of an election year, mind you, that was a difficult time, to do things like that. And, he was a person that gave us hope at that point in time. Unfortunately, during that time frame, it didn't happen.
Right. You have another son, Daniel, correct? Omir's brother?
Yes.
Am I correct with that? How did this impact Daniel? Did it stir something inside of him as well? How did he respond to this whole ordeal?
Well, our second son, Daniel, was just a freshman in university. And, a month in, he's in his dorms. And I'm calling him early in the morning, October 7th, and saying, I think something happened to Omer. We can't get a hold of him. And he was sitting all day on the internet, and he saw a video of Omer's tank and Omer being abducted. He thought he recognized him. It was horrible. And it took us a couple of days to understand that he won't be able to stay in university. Nobody around him understood what was going on, with him. And we brought him home, and for 2 years he was with us multiple times in Washington, speaking in Congress, advocating for the release of the hostages. And only recently he went back to school, even though he managed to learn from home. We don't know how he did it, but he did. And we're so proud of him. And we just hope that he can rebuild and continue with his life. But it definitely impacted him.
Yeah, and he's definitely, living whatever is happening right now on college campuses and in the United States in general, right? The response to Israel, there's a lot of very disturbing, trends these days, the anti-Semitism that is rising. He's a contemporary, right, of this generation. And, of course, he has his own view. I can't speak for him.
Yeah.
But he's dealing with his own personal family issues and, with whatever they're dealing with as young Jewish people and Americans here right now.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to, Renan, I spoke to you earlier, and you mentioned how you both met with Presidents Biden and Trump. And I want to hear about those meetings because it made a big difference in the release of hostages.
Right. So stay tuned. We'll be continuing our conversation right here on Red Apple Radio Networks, The Rev and the Rabbi.
Reverend A.R. Bernard, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, the Rev and the Rabbi. Where faith matters, the Rev and the Rabbi.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
We are speaking with Ronen and Orna Nutra, who tragically lost his son Omer, who was murdered in Gaza. He was taken hostage and murdered shortly thereafter. You met two presidents, Biden and Trump. And Ronen, I want to talk about that because, you can meet someone and it can be purely ceremonial. It can be very superficial, but it has to be very different when you're meeting a family who has endured this kind of pain. Renee, Orna?
Yes. Well, I don't know if I ever told you this, but on October 15, 2023, we got a phone call from President Trump. At the time, he wasn't president. President Biden was the president. It was an ex-president, and he still called us just to say that he heard about what happened to us from a colleague, and he wanted to express his concern and said that he's on it. And at the time, a week into the war, we told President Trump that it is really one of the largest humanitarian issues, and it has to stay bipartisan. And we urged him to work with the current administration at the time, President Biden, and not make it into a political issue. And he promised us that. And a few weeks later, we've been to the White House and we met with the Biden administration, and there was a cadence of meetings with Jack Sullivan and Brett McGurk at the White House, and then we met as well with President Biden. And really the warmth and the fact that we felt that they cared about it and they really wanted to release the hostages was felt through the Biden administration, and they managed to release the women and the children.
For us, it was clear that this cannot turn into a bipartisan issue. It was an election year, and we realized that if this was going to become a partisan issue, it would work against us, and we needed to do everything possible to keep it bipartisan. We always made sure to meet with senators, congressmen from both sides of the aisle and keep them engaged and ask for their support. And, I don't think we've ever had anybody not agree to meet with us or, not show compassion and want to be helpful. Some were more action-oriented than others and were more involved, but from both parties, really. And that it was an art, to keep that going during an election year to make sure. And you can see once President Trump was elected, we were invited to meet with, at the time, Jake Sullivan and Brett McGurk that were in charge of the negotiations for our last meeting. And we said to them, listen, we cannot afford 40 days of halts, nothing happening with the hostage situation before President Trump is inaugurated. We need you to pass the torch in an order, please, work with the new administration and make sure that it happens. And they brought that up to President Biden. The next day, we were with President Biden in the Oval Office, and he said, President Trump was here this morning, and I passed on your request, and his team will work with my team, and we know that happened.
At the day President Trump was inaugurated, hostages came out. And since then, we saw a very dedicated Trump administration and President Trump himself to make sure that nobody stays behind. And I think, to our surprise and everybody's surprises, all the hostages came out, the deceased and the live hostages. And I think it surprised a lot of people. But we saw the level of commitment. We saw how important it was for President Trump. And I think that the result is what we've all seen. Everybody's back. And, we didn't get Omer the way we wanted him. It was murdered. But we got his body, which was very important for us. And we told President Trump multiple times, the deceased must come back to their families. They need a grave.
Yeah.
And it took collaboration, if I may comment, because the President Trump is surrounded by Christian evangelicals who are very strong in their commitment to Israel and the Jewish people. So that was I know
Absolutely.
the majority of them, and that was very important because they kept putting pressure on the president to make sure he stayed
That's
involved.
very true. That's
yeah.
very true.
Mhm.
Actually, we were invited to come and speak at the RNC, which was the launch of the Republican campaign, and this was by the CEO of a conservative group, Concerned Women for America.
Of America, yeah.
Of America, and they were in touch with us, and they really wanted to make sure that the hostage situation was brought to the world stage. And they're the ones that invited us to come and speak. And we've been, we were at the Kufi National Conference multiple times.
Christians United for
Israel, and many other hostages and hostage families spoke at those conferences. And I believe that, the fact that the evangelical community, was supporting us and made sure that that this issue was kept front and center was critical.
One of the most
engaging the Trump administration. Yeah.
One of the most lasting memories Reverend and I have is sitting with you at the Cardinal, then was Cardinal Dolan, and we have Archbishop Hicks, but sitting with you at the Cardinal's residence, and he spoke to you and spoke of your son as our son, he's with us, he's from us.
Local boy, he called us,
local boy, yeah.
Yeah. And then people prayed with you and for you. And I was afraid that, oh my God, they're going to leave. They're going to go to another faith now, these people. It was just so welcoming. But it was a remarkable moment. And I think one of the things you've learned is that goodness transcends denomination, right? There are good people on all different sides.
Moral clarity.
Yeah.
Moral clarity transcends denominations. And I think that's what we experienced for sure from Cardinal Dolan and many other groups and individuals that we met with. I think they could see, the tragedy of what happened and empathize with us. I think the Cardinal, he got it. He said, this is a kid that grew up here. It could have been someone else's kid,
Right.
It really touched him, and we felt his support. He's really a unique human being, really.
He is. Well, it's an honor to know you, and I've been with you a number of times. We even honored you at the New York Board of Rabbis event this year. You're very special people, and you've acquired a large family now because Christians, Jews, I know Muslim people who really stand with you. So let's, maybe in Omer's memory, let's try to keep people closer to one another because we're too divided in this world.
We are too divided, and most of us want the same thing, peace, unity, and love each other. And really, it's the people we met throughout this journey
And you're absolutely right. You know, it's the spirit of Omer. Omer was a bridge builder wherever he went. He was the regional president of his youth group, and in his senior year, before he left the position, that's what he chose to talk about. He said, you know, it's not enough to have fun for yourself. Look around the room, see the people that are, you know, on the outskirts, that maybe don't have a friend, that don't feel so comfortable. Bring them into the fold. Make sure that they're having a good time too. He was a true bridge builder wherever he went. And in his spirit, we promise to continue doing that in his name.
As we close, you know, people listen to us for perspectives on current events, but also for our spirituality and what we bring united. What does hope, the word hope, mean to you after all of this?
Hope is something that you got to work toward. It's not something that you got to wait for. If we learned something through this process, is that even common people like us can make a difference. We were driven by our son's story and by his legacy. We knew there are lives on stake. It really drove us every day to ask the question, what should we do today to bring them home? But
Beautiful.
we had to act. And you got to be hopeful, but you got to bring hope by acting toward a better future.
And you did.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hope is not a noun, it's a verb. It's an action word.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
That's exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you so much
for
being on the program. Yeah. Always good to have you. And thank you for the conversation. And we've come to the close of another episode of The Rev and the Rabbi. We hope that you've been blessed as we have been just engaging in this conversation. Till next time, God bless.